Summary. What we'd like to do is to create an ethical docking station, AI-enabled, between NHS data and life sciences to transform outcomes. It's as straightforward as that. One of the most globally underserved areas for data is mental health. And if you go to places like the US, it's fragmented because of their systems. It's insurance-based, they chop and change every year. So it's not longitudinal, so you're missing outcomes of a long-term treatment, which particularly mental health is pivotal. We have 25 million patient records sitting in our RIO databases. 25 million patient records. 4.1 billion records. A record is an encounter, a progress note. Progress note, by the way, could be a massive length of data in its own right. So we're talking about a lot of data, and in science terms, and I know I did this for 3 years before I joined Access with NHS trusts and pharmaceutical, that's at least 167 records per patient record. That's dense data, very valuable. It's also NHS grade. I know some of you may think that's an oxymoron. It's globally renowned as some of the best data in the world. Can you take raw data alone? No. But if you put it into an observational format, this is OMOPS is a standard format for the language of clinical research, like HL7 is the language of healthcare and healthcare interoperability. And that's what we would hope to do, is transform that data into something immediately usable. But the business case for this is really interesting. Monetization of this could reach over nearly 4 billion by 2033. It's projected to grow to billions with massive growth. Healthcare data monetization, as I said, 3.7 billion. 1/5 of all spending in the world on healthcare is now in mental health. 1/5. It's a huge, it's trillions. And if you think about our opportunity to help companies find better treatments by the use of data, particularly 25 million patient records worth of it, you've got something quite compelling. So what's the value of the data? Well, the government asked Ernst & Young to do a review. But the value of the raw data is valued at around about £100 per patient record. So you can see the immediate value immediately. But if you start to add value to that data, if you start to work with Genomics England, if you start to work with other groups, pharmaceuticals, biobanks, other groups too, and I've got a few examples later, that value, just like oil, which you take it out of the ground as crude, and then it becomes refined into diesel, into petrol, it grows in value. By the time it reaches plastics and specialist products, you've got something which is worth a multiple of that £100. Now, we can't unlock that because we are effectively the donors for it. But you don't know how to unlock it. We think we can become an ethical AI docking station to allow other people to unlock that for us. So we don't want to do it ourselves, but we want to be the conduit to see if we can actually unlock that with you. In terms of the values of those subscription-based models, so we can create a data lake. We were talking about data lakes earlier. And what does that mean? It means that actually you would have access to a data lake as well. Interestingly, we think that could create your FTP feed as and when it gets defined. Can we create an AI docking station, ethically based? And the reason I keep on calling it ethically based is that we are not going to be touching patient identifiable information. We will provide the ability to do that, to anonymize it, and to pseudo-anonymize it. There's a differentiation which is very, very important coming up in a minute. And that will allow us to only work with data that's far less well, it won't be identifiable because it will follow the 16 tenets of how you anonymize data, ICO-based standards, including, and as a Doctor Who fan, I love saying this, temporal shifting, which means you just move dates left and right. But that still allows you to have a huge body of data that you can then interrogate for patterns, for machine learning, for a whole raft of digital products that we can create from this, whether it's raw access, OMOPS access, which is probably the minimum level we would start with, all the way through into digital twins, clinical algorithms, non-clinical algorithms. You do need MedDev certification, which we are going to be 1345 compliant in about a month or two to deliver all of our products through the MedDev cycle that need it. to Class 1, Class 2A certifications. But we have the most unique data set. And if you talk to specialists in this field, they are absolutely gobsmacked that this exists. And if you talk to a lot of the experts in this room, you know, Joe and others that have spoken to us, this is a most globally unique data set. Wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't have at least one diagram to talk you through, so please bear with me for a second. The left-hand side, you've got the sourcing of data, the data donors, yourselves, if you wish to go ahead with this. And as mental health or community health trusts, we would recommend this be a phase 1. The reason being is that there is immediate value in this, and I think we're all fully aware of the pressures on costs. Where are you going to find money to do X, Y, and Z? Well, there's an unlocked asset here that we believe together we can unlock. But it's not just mental health data or community health data, what sits in Rio. We've also got 63 local authorities that use our system for social care management, provisioning and commissioning. We've got over 400 million hours a year of domiciliary care that's sitting there, and we can actually start to link this together underneath the covers with a master patient index that we have built already to accommodate our healthcare business. So we're now applying that into local government and into care in the community, particularly around domiciliary care. So that's quite interesting if you can link all of these data sets together, even more unique, particularly if you then apply that to education and so on and so forth. We've got an enterprise transformation layer. The architecture for this is being built with Microsoft, with their latest Microsoft Fabric technology. So it would fit and align with everything that you will have in your own areas for access in terms of the tooling. Microsoft 365 is a good example, Power BI, so on and so forth. And that will allow us to do this conversion from Rio HL7, any other data source, into HL7. So we've got a nice, neat database there, anonymized or pseudonymized. I'm going to cover that piece now. Anonymization is useful for things like machine learning, the creation of algorithms, which either you could build, we could build, a third party could build, but at least it's against a very, very, very rich, vibrant data set. And it includes outcomes, it includes all of the components that you know that sits in Rio. If you want to do reverse trial clinical matching, we can also scrape every single open sourced clinical trial set of requirements that are out there in the world. We can have Claude do that, OpenAI, there's many tools that can do that. So we've now got a set of criteria that we can now do a reverse auction, if you will, against the data that sits inside your Rios. And it wouldn't touch the actual data, it touches what's called the metadata, touches the description of the data that sits within your Rio databases. And if it comes back with there are 12 matches in Avon or in Derbyshire or wherever it is, then we can notify that trust, because we'll have that information as to where that data came from. That's not one of the things that needs to be anonymized, pseudo-anonymized. And then they can actually unlock who that would be. We have no access to that. So you would hold the keys to that. Those digital keys, we don't touch that. And then if you want to do the transaction, you can do, and then you can work directly. We'll basically do the linkage, if you will, including the ethics as well as necessary, still working on that piece. But that then allows you then to choose, if you like, a clinical selection profile where you say, I'd like anonymized data or pseudo-anonymized, and it will just tell you how many records would come back against the 25 million patients, 4.1 billion data records. By the way, it's growing at 350 million records per year. So it's an ever-growing asset. So it's not just a one-off. This is something that in perpetuity, and I'm coming on to the top green line because I'm sure that's where you want me to get to, I hope. We can then have this as a continuing revenue stream to whoever signs up for it. And there's no additional work for you. In fact, you get an assets or two out of this with the FTP feed and so on and so forth. Who are the users? Who are the people that would pay for this? Government will pay for this. Pharmaceuticals will pay for it for a number of areas. We've even proven that we can now do, for my data and AI team, I've got 7 people in the group across the whole of the division. They've done synthetic data for me, so we can actually replicate based on a set of criteria that a researcher would put in based on the pattern of the Rio data, and it will create completely synthetic copies of that data that are temporally shifted and all the other good things that you need to do to accommodate that, which means that we have access to actually unlimited number of synthetic data sets, which is just a shade less valuable than real world data. All anonymized, all fine for GDPR and data privacy. And then finally, at the top, we would like to pass the revenue that we make from that, a share of the revenue back. I don't know what the number is, please don't, let's be on my pay grade. I'm just the plumber. Maybe the electrician as well. So we've yet to decide on what that would be, but it would be substantial. It would not be, you know, a 1% or anything like that. This is not about us making lots of money about this. It's about doing a couple of things. One is we think this is massively unexploited for the better of British industry, if you don't mind me saying that this is a British domiciled area. All of the data that you are currently having to send out for other purposes is going one way that you are having to pay for as well. Academic research, again, their paywalls, other trusts. Could we create a marketplace out of this, that if you have your own algorithms that you built against this, would other trusts find it useful? Bed management, there's a whole raft of things which don't require necessarily any medical device certification, but actually algorithms are very powerful for forecasting allocation of resources. It's a good example. So again, you get the idea from that. Also third-party data sources, covered those as well. So things like Genomics England would be incredibly interested in this. Again, against anonymization, but you get the idea that we can create quite valuable data pools for us to monetize. Why do this? Well, how can we do this? Technically, it's relatively straightforward. Just showing you the diagram there. We would not be sucking huge amounts of data to create the lakes unless there is a need for it. We need to have a data sharing agreement, and I'm absolutely not diminishing how important this is. This is probably the number one thing. We've currently got our legal team working on what we think is a very powerful data sharing agreement. It's being done with lawyers that have worked extensively with the NHS for this very purpose. They're telling us, and we know, and I know from my personal experience, this has been done thousands of times across hundreds and hundreds of trusts over the years. So it's not something that's new. It's been done before, but not with a revenue share. So that's something that's a bit different. It's a massively growing asset that we've got in standardized format. Well, it's American spelling, I do apologize. Standardized format to enable it to be immediately accessible. One of the big problems that pharmaceuticals have is that it takes so long to get a CSV file download from a trust, and then you lose all of the metadata associated with that, and it gets re-wrangled back into its format, and it takes months of work to do that. We believe we've got ways to use AI and other tools to actually take that data on an on-demand basis rather than on a chuck it all into a lake, spend years trying to manipulate it. So that's another benefit. Ethical framework, revenue sharing model, scalable product suite around not just one product, but we think there are several products that we can continue to develop and augment. And again, people that join the donation, the data, trying to think of a better word for that, but who assist in providing the data, there's a revenue share back. And then finally, data governance, very strong ethical guidance for this, strong data sharing agreements, ethical sign-offs, Guardian agreements, and everything that needs to be done at the trust level, and that's something we would work through together. Microsoft, IBM, Cognizant, Clinicthink, they're all partnerships that have already agreed to work with us on this. They're all extremely excited. IBM, their global health team, we've met with. They have multiple links with multiple pharmaceuticals, so they already have those links, those people willing to pay for access to that data, which would sit only within the Access environment, so it'll be our environment. The data would never leave that. They would use their models within that subscription service. We've got pharmaceuticals. Again, I don't know if you're aware, but there's over 230 drugs being developed globally at the moment, just in depression. Biotech partners, there's multiple there, and then there's lots of academic partners. These are just a few. UCL, Daisy, UCL Professor of Social Prescribing there. We're already working with her. We've created several academic papers, which are very powerful. This would be another way for her to look at outcomes and predictions and algorithms for the value of the social prescribing platform. So there's all sorts of things that this could be used for fantastic good, but at the moment it's locked. Expand data partnerships, spoken about that, higher tier products. So the more we do this, the higher value, just like oil, and you get it up to plastics and other substances. Same with data. You start to add more and more value to it, it gets more and more valuable. Continuously develop this with R&D, again, with your partnership. Roughly speaking, we can have the first iteration up probably within 3 months, because I can use synthetic data. It all depends on data sharing agreements and your interest in participating in this, quite frankly. So my request to you is, would you like to be involved? And if so, can we have a conversation, please, as quickly as possible? Yeah, risks and mitigations, robust anonymization, adherence to GDPR. I mean, I think you've heard us talk incessantly about the ethical side of our nature. This is very dear to my heart, and unlocking this, I think, will be incredibly valuable for you, for ourselves, for the life science industry in general. And it's based in Britain, with our data doing something for our populations. Active monitoring of the regulatory landscape. And again, we don't want to move out of mental health. We think that and community health, those are the two areas that probably the biggest opportunity for us initially. But then linking that into third-party data sets opens up whole rafts of opportunity for us all.
Okay, thanks, Alan.